Falcon Coilover Shocks can now be installed on the JK Wrangler using TeraFlex's coilover brackets. Designed to work with TeraFlex long arms and axles, the coilover bracket kit includes everything needed to install Falcon Coilover Shocks. To install the coilover brackets, you will need to cut off a lot of the factory brackets and cut off part of the frame. Welding experience is a must, but it will also save a lot of time if you have access to a plasma torch. This video will show the correct way to do everything. A lot of this video is sped up to 1,000 times normal speed just to be able to show it all in a reasonable amount of time. Let's talk requirements. Not all Jeeps are built the same, and this coilover kit is no joke. If you want this, then you will have to be committed. First off, long arms are absolutely necessary. If you don't have long arms already, then don't worry, you can install them at the same time. The other thing that is required are Tera 60 axles, or you could use other 60s so long as they have a 3¼ inch tube. However, Tera 60 axles are the only axles tested and will definitely be able to handle the increased rotational forces that are created by coilovers. This video is going to start with the factory axles already removed. Normally we would show this process, but to cut down on the video's length, we assume that you know how to remove the axles. On the front axle, remove the front shock mount and spring perch. Use a plasma torch if you have one available. It will speed up the process. For the rear axle, remove the spring perch and the bump stop strike pad. Also on the lower control arm mount, cut off the shock mount and the sway bar link mount. It's also okay to cut off the lower section of the mount below the lowest mounting hole. Do not remove the entire bracket. You still need it to mount the lower control arm. For both axles, you will need to remove powder coat from the axles in the locations where the new brackets will mount. On the front axle, locate the spots for the bump stop strike pad brackets. The driver's side is located directly next to the axle housing so that it is touching. On the passenger side, measure out 16 1/8 inch from the axle housing. This will be the location of the inside edge of the bracket. Using an angle finder, find the angle on the bracket. Zero it on the flat surface of the face of the axle housing and set the bracket to 84 degrees from there. Tack the brackets into place, then double check the measurement and angle. The shock mounts are located using the provided metal template. Using the angle finder, bend the template 7 degrees. Only one template is provided, so after you get one side on, bend it the other direction 7 degrees and put the other side on. Attach the template to the hole on the outside of the strike pad using M10 hardware. There should be some in the kit. Align the shock mount using an M16 bolt so the hole on the shock mount aligns with the hole on the template. The shock mount should then sit flat against the template. Avoid pushing the template one way or the other. Let the template dictate where the shock bracket should go. Tack the bracket into place and remove the template. Repeat on the other side with the template bent in the other direction. Weld around the brackets as much as you can. The rear axle brackets are installed in a similar manner to the front. Locate the position of the bump stop strike pads by measuring from the edge of the axle housing. The driver's side is 11¼ inch from the housing, and the passenger side is 12 5/8 inch. Zero the angle finder on the flat part of the face of the axle housing and set the strike pads to 63 degrees from there. Tack it in place and then double check that the measurement from the housing and the angle are correct. Bend the metal template 13.4 degrees. Like in the front, the rear metal template will be used on both sides. Attach it to the upper control arm mount. Attach the shock mount in the same manner as the front. Align it using M16 hardware and tack it in place. Remove the template and use it for the other side. Weld around the shock mount and strike pad. Insert the sway bar link mount on the rear side of the strike pad and make sure it is centered and welded in place. The upper control arm reinforcement goes inside the upper control arm bracket, welded into place. Make sure you do this after you install the shock mount, because this will block the hole needed to mount the metal template. The last thing to weld onto the axles is the new parking brake bracket. It sits 9 7/8 inch from the backing plate mount. Align the hole with the parking brake linkage. Starting in the front, make sure the brake lines are disconnected from the frame, shock tower, and spring bucket. Place some soaking wet rags on top of the brake lines and other cables you can't move far away. Place some scrap metal behind the shock tower and spring bucket to protect the engine. Cut off the shock tower and spring bucket using the plasma torch or cutoff wheel. It's easiest to take off the shock tower first. Cut a straight line across the top of the spring bucket, cutting it in half. With the front section off, cut along the top of the frame to remove the rest of the bucket. The reinforcement plate can be bent away from the frame. It should just break right off. Along the top of the frame, cut off the welds and hammer the bracket off. Use a grinder to get everything smooth. Before installing the brackets on the passenger side, you will need to open up some existing holes on the frame. The outer holes should already be the correct size, but the corresponding inside holes will need to be opened up to 5/8 inch. Vehicles from the 2007 model year do not have holes in the frame on the passenger side. Use the provided template and drill holes 1 1/16 inch on the outside of the frame and 5/8 inch on the inside of the frame. Install the 4 spacers using the provided hardware. These spacers strengthen the frame to match the driver's side. Tack the sleeves to the frame, afterward remove the hardware. To locate the shock tower brackets, locate the square brake line mounting hole and measure from the front of the hole towards the rear 0.6 inches. This winds up being about 39/64 of an inch, or between 9/32 and 5/8 inch. Place the frame reinforcement onto the frame and place the shock tower bracket so it covers the rear section of that. The holes on the frame reinforcement bracket should surround the frame holes evenly. When the 2 brackets are positioned correctly, put a few tacks on to hold them in place. The speed bump mount goes in front of the shock tower. Make sure it sits firmly against the tower and the frame reinforcement before tacking it into place. Double check everything is sitting in the correct position and weld it all together. This is not a welding instruction video, so just weld everywhere the frame and bracket meet, and everywhere you can reasonably get the welder without lighting the vehicle on fire. The footage is sped up considerably. You'll notice that we keep jumping around and weld on different parts of the frame. This was to keep any one spot from getting too hot. you are done, make sure you allow for a good long while for the frame to cool. Included are some brake line brackets. These sit just behind the shock tower, in line with where the factory brake line brackets mounted. The measurements given are a good starting point, but it's pretty easy to just use the brake lines and locate them. The intention is that you weld these brackets on, but they have a zinc coating, so you'll need to remove that first. You can use muriatic acid if you have that available, but vinegar and a wire brush will also get it off. If you would rather drill holes, tap the holes and install with bolts. That is also an option, but the hardware is not provided to do that. Temporarily install the brake line onto the bracket and tack it in place. Check that the hard line won't rub on the frame or new bracketry. Adjust the line as needed. Remove the line before welding it. Once the brackets are installed, you will want to paint any exposed metal using a quality etching primer and many coats of black enamel paint. Install the Falcon Shocks using hardware provided in the bracket kit. Install the speed bumps, cover them with RTV silicone and slide them up into the mount. Install and tighten the bolt to hold it in place. A curved badge is included that you can place onto the speed bump mount. Reinstall the axle and attach the speed bump strike pad spacers to it. The spacers provided are the correct amount for 40-inch tires. If you require more bump than this, then additional spacers are available for purchase. Bump stop spacing can be different for each vehicle, so we highly recommend you cycle your suspension to check clearances. Attach the new brake lines to the calipers and the hard lines at the L brackets you welded on earlier. Brake line anchor brackets are included and get installed on the bump stop strike pads. These need to be angled so as to keep the brake lines away from the springs on the coilover shocks. Install the provided axle breather hose. Make sure that you swap the top of the OEM breather hose to the new longer hose. If you install it while the axle is at full droop, then you will know how much slack to give it, so it doesn't bind up. Run it up along the back side of the driver's shock tower and zip tie it to something up in the engine bay. Before cutting off the rear brackets, there is quite a bit of prep work involved. Start with removing the fuel line. On the body, underneath the vertical section of the fuel line, is a spot where the fuel line can be accessed. There is some foam that needs to be trimmed. To make it easier to get the vertical section of the fuel line out, mark a square next to the opening and cut it out. Clean up any sharp edges. Loosen the body mounts and raise the rear of the body off the frame at least 2 inches. If you need to replace the body mounts, then this might be a good time to do it. On the earlier JK model years, there are 2 additional body mount bolts that need to be removed. They won't be reinstalled. These mounts are not on most model years, even though there are spots for them, so there is no issue in removing them. Disconnect the fuel line from the tank. Remove the bolt on the fuel line mounting bracket. Loosen the clamp in the middle where the fuel line bends and separate the fuel line into two halves. This will make it easier to remove. Shift the fuel line to the outside of the frame and pull down on the vertical section until it comes free of the vehicle. With the fuel line out, the tub can now be cut without fear of cutting the fuel line. Clear out the cargo area, including the plastic sides and the carpet, to expose the tub. We removed the hard top for the video to make things easier to see, but you don't need to remove the hard top. Depending on the trim and year, this process will be a little different. The carpet is held in place with a number of hook mounts that bolt into place. With the carpet out, set the patch panel onto the tub and align the cutout in the top of the panel with the center rib. Mark the seam sealer where the patch panel meets it. Remove the patch panel and carve out the seam sealer in the marked locations. Replace the patch panel and make sure it sits tight against the floor and the side of the tub. If it doesn't fit, remove more seam sealer until it does. Trace around the patch panel. Don't trace the tabs. Only trace the main section of the panel. For the sections you can't trace, use a straight edge and connect the lines. You need to cut in about 1/4 inch from the traced line. Easiest way to measure in is to trace along the inside of the outline with a 1/4 inch chisel marker. We doubled up the line on the bottom of the tub just to be safe. The process for cutting can be done in multiple ways. We drilled 4 holes and connected them with a body saw, making sure they stay inside the traced line. Here's a small part that needs to be cut from the outside before it can be removed. Trim the sharp corners. On the driver's side, there is a small section of the body reinforcement that needs to be removed to provide clearance for the fuel lines. Be sure to clean up any sharp edges so that nothing rubs on the fuel line. Fold the frame cut-out metal templates. 2 of these are included, so fold them as mirror images. They get attached to the factory sway bar mount using the factory bolts. Hold the other end firmly against the frame. We use a clamp. Trace around the top and sides of the template. On the bottom, start the line, but we'll finish it in a minute. Cut off the track bar bracket and bump stop mount. Connect the line on the bottom of the frame using a straight edge. It's time to cut into the frame. Use a cutoff wheel and cut on the line you traced. You'll notice we placed the patch panel over the hole in the tub. This is to try and keep the sparks and debris from flying into the vehicle. Avoid cutting beyond the line. We stopped short of the corners and cut them with a body saw. Remove the powder coat on the underside of the frame in the areas around the track bar bracket, in the spring bucket, and around the opening on the crossbar. Relocate the hard brake lines so they are roughly in the new position. It'll be harder to get them into position after the brackets are welded on. Put clamps on the soft lines and remove the calipers. Carefully bend the hard lines so they run up along the frame. On the driver's side, have it go along the inside of the frame, and on the passenger side, it'll go along the top of the frame. Because you still need to weld, push the lines as far away from the frame as possible. Disconnect the wire harness on the passenger side and push it further under the vehicle to protect it from the heat that comes from welding. On both sides of the vehicle, the body needs to be trimmed just above where the forward frame reinforcements will sit. Mark where the underside meets the side and cut the section of the body that hangs down. But make sure you do not remove the pinch weld entirely. On the driver's side, disconnect the wire harness and move it out of the way. This one goes up the fuel line opening, so just move it out of the way from where you will be welding. Trim the body on the driver's side to make room for the fuel line later. This will follow the line where the underside and the side meet, but make sure you do not completely remove the pinch weld. Temporarily clamp the large bracket to the frame. Adjust the positioning so the bracket sticks out from the frame 3/4 inches on both sides, and so the bottom of the bracket is 5/16 inches lower from the frame. Tack the bracket into place and double check all the measurements. Attach the two halves of the shock mount bracket to the provided sleeve. The tabs are side specific and are both different. Double check the parts list and the written instructions to make sure you have the correct bracket in the correct position. Etched into the main bracket are two rectangles that indicate where the tabs should be located. If you have a stretch kit on your vehicle, the shock mounting brackets will have to be placed further back on the main bracket. Because stretch kits come in various lengths, the main bracket does not have a second etch for installing with the coilover brackets. So you are on your own to get them in the correct position for your vehicle. However, as a general rule, the shock mounting brackets, track bar bracket, and speed bumps will need to be moved back the same amount you are moving the axle back. Other modifications may be necessary to install the TeraFlex coilover suspension system with a stretch kit. The spacer sleeve ensures that the tabs are the exact distance apart that they need to be. Tack the tabs onto the bracket. The kit only comes with one sleeve, so you will need to tack these on one pair at a time. The forward frame reinforcements will cover a section where the frame meets the main bracket, so weld this section completely. You will need to weld the grab on the outer frame reinforcement. Attach the forward frame reinforcements. The inner reinforcement pushes against the back of the main bracket and rests on the edge of the outer bracket. Tack these in place. Tack the rearward reinforcements. The upper is side specific. Tack the crossmember stiffener on the driver's side into place. The hole needs to go towards the rear. This is very important. It will provide access to attach the fuel line bracket later. On the passenger side, the track bar bracket needs to be installed at the same time as the crossmember and spring bucket stiffeners. The track bar bracket needs to be tight to the frame from underneath and tied against the outside of the main bracket. The stiffeners should be touching the bracket. Tack all three together and to the frame and or crossmember. Tack the speed bump mount onto the main bracket. It sits 1 inch up from the bottom of the bracket and pressed firmly against the main bracket. Double check the placement of everything. At this point, any mistakes can be fixed relatively easily, but after it's all welded up, changing the placement of something becomes drastically harder. If it's all good, then start welding. Like we said in the front, this is not a welding instruction video, so just weld everywhere the frame and the bracket meet, and everywhere you can reasonably get the welder. With the tub cut out, getting behind the main bracket should be a lot easier than it otherwise would be. On the driver's side, the brake line will run along the underside of the frame and do a bend that looks a bit like a hook. Don't let the brake line rub on the frame, especially be careful where the bit on the crossbar drops down. And also be careful while you are bending so that you do not kink or crack the hard line. In the written instructions, some measurements are given to help you locate the bracket, but like in the front, it's definitely better to test fit everything and attach the bracket in a place that makes the most sense. The intention is that you weld these brackets on, but they have a zinc coating, so you will have to remove that first. Tack the bracket into place with the brake line loosely attached to it, then remove the line and weld the bracket onto the frame. The placement of this bracket as we have it is right on the edge of the frame, so weld all around it. The passenger side bracket will be attached on the rear side of the outside of the frame just behind the main coilover bracket. Again, make sure the brake line does not rub on the frame. There's less danger of that on the passenger side, but it's still good to go along the whole length of the line and check for rubbing. Tack the bracket into place with the brake line attached, and then remove the line before welding it on. Prime and paint the brackets using a quality etching primer and enamel paint. Once the paint dries, install the brake lines. There are some clips to hold the driver's side hard lines to the frame. Check one final time that the brake lines do not rub on the frame anywhere along the area that has been relocated. The fuel line needs to be modified so it can fit into its new route. The rear section needs to be cut in half and reconnected with the provided hoses. The measurements provided in the written instructions are shown on the screen here. The breather hose is cut in 2 locations, and the main line is cut in 1 location. You want these cut to be precise and straight. Deburr the edges after cutting and clean out the lines with air. You definitely don't want metal shavings to get into your fuel tank. Flatten the mounting bracket with a hammer. The provided hoses meet the same standards as the other soft fuel lines on the Jeep. Install them with the provided clamps. You'll probably need to install the fuel line in sections, but here is the assembly on the table so you can see everything. Reinstall the fuel lines onto the vehicle. Where the fuel line runs in between the body and the frame, it's very important that it gets as close to the body as possible. The vertical section that goes up to the fill opening will connect to the other section just like we showed on the table. Make sure the hose clamps are pointing outward so you can easily tighten them. As you reinstall the section under the vehicle that runs from the frame to the tank, you need to push the hard line further into the soft hose sections where it bends and where it connects to the tank. Basically, everything just needs to be a little shorter. The bracket that you flatten on the fuel line should align with the hole in the cross-member reinforcement. Make certain the fuel line is as far away from the frame as possible before inserting the self-tapping screw up through the hole and attaching the bracket to the body. Tighten down all the clamps and reattach the other connections. Tie everything off and make double sure it won't rub on the frame or anything else. Install the speed bumps. Cover with RTV silicone and slide them up into the mount. Install and tighten the bolt to hold them in place. Install the provided axle breather hose. Install the Falcon Shocks. Simply attach the top and bottom with the provided hardware. The reservoirs go towards the rear of the vehicle. Install all the other components that are needed to make the vehicle drivable. If you are installing long arms at the same time, then there is probably a lot more for you to do. Remember to cycle the suspension and check clearances. If you are installing TeraFlex's relocated rear sway bar, then brake line anchors have been included to attach the brake lines to the links. The final thing to be installed are the patch panels and carpet patches. We painted the panels going onto this vehicle. They are purposely left unpainted so you can color match your vehicle color if you want to. We just painted ours black. Place the patch panels onto the vehicle so that they cover up the holes in the tub and so there are no gaps. Mark all the holes in the tabs around the patch panel. Remove the panel and drill holes at the marks to 13/64 inch. On the driver's side, be careful not to drill out the fuel line. The provided seam sealer will go onto the patch panel before installation. There are two gaps in the panel where the bent sections meet. Put seam sealer on these to seal the gaps. Put the seam sealer on the underside of the flaps. You want a bead that is about 1/8 of an inch thick. Set the patch panel into place so it covers the hole and is tight against the tub. Insert the rivets into the holes along the bottom of the tub. Use a rivet gun to lock them into place. Install the side rivets from the outside. Have someone push on the patch panel to keep it tight against the tub. Once all the rivets are installed, use the seam sealer to seal where the patch panel butts up against the tub. After you get both sides to this point, look over your work and double check that you got all the little gaps and corners. The provided tube of seam sealer should be plenty for both sides, but be careful not to use more than half the tube on one side. Temporarily replace the carpet and locate the patch panel underneath it. Mark the corners of the patch panel on the carpet and remove the carpet from the vehicle. Draw a line between the marks to connect them. You should have a trapezoid shape that resembles the patch panel. Measure 1/2 to 3/4 inches out from the line you just drew and add a second line. Cut along the outer line using a sharp razor blade. The sharper the blade is, the easier it will be to cut the carpet. Test fit in the vehicle using the carpet patch to see how everything fits. Adjust things as needed. Once you are happy with the cutout, flip the carpet over and remove the pad around the cutout about an inch or so. Use a spray-on adhesive to attach the carpet patch to the carpet. You can tape off the carpet patch to keep the glue off, but mineral spirits will also get in the overspray. Note that we do not provide the spray adhesive for this. Let the glue dry and replace the carpet and reinstall everything into the cargo area. On the last page of the written instructions are some notes about the alignment. It's very important you look over these notes and set your vehicle up for success, and make sure that you get the alignment done at a shop that is familiar with off-road vehicles. Installing the coilover kit onto the JK is quite an endeavor, but if you made it to this point, then reward yourself with a trip to your favorite trail and let loose. You won't be disappointed.